at 7:03 on a Sunday morning, 4 hours before my open house. I opened the basement door and heard water hitting the floor like someone had left a shower running inside the walls. Then I saw it. Brown stormwater spreading across the basement, storage boxes floating the bottom step underwater, and a bright blue electrical spark snapping from the outlet beside the washer. I froze for half a second. Then the breaker popped. The entire house went dark. My realtor was supposed to arrive at 9. Buyers were supposed to walk through at 11. The photographer had just taken listing photos 2 days earlier. When the basement was dry, painted, staged, and ready, now it smelled like mud, wet drywall, and panic. I ran outside in the rain and saw water pouring through the back fence from the HOA common area behind my house. Not trickling, pouring. A thick brown stream was coming out of a black plastic drain pipe that had not been there the week before. Someone had cut the swale behind my yard. Someone had installed a pipe through the slope. Someone had pointed the neighborhood runoff straight at my basement wall, and standing under an umbrella near the common area gate was my next-door neighbor, Nolan Briggs, smiling like he had been waiting for me to notice. He said, "Looks like your old house finally has drainage problems." Old house. My house had never flooded. Not once. Not in 10 years. Not during hurricanes. Not during spring storms. Not until the HOA Landscaping Committee improved the common area 3 days before my open house. By noon, the showing was canceled. By 3, my realtor had marked the listing temporarily unavailable. By Monday morning, the HOA sent me a violation notice for unmanaged drainage discharge, visible erosion, standing water, and failure to maintain rear lot grading. They gave me 10 days to correct the drainage problem they had created. Then Nolan sent a message to the neighborhood group saying buyers should be warned about known basement flooding at my address. Known, that one word nearly killed my sale. But Nolan and the HOA made one mistake they did not know about. My backyard camera had recorded their contractor at 6:41 p.m. on Thursday. It caught the trenching machine. It caught Nolan pointing toward my fence. It caught the pipe being installed through the common area slope. And it caught the HOA president saying, "Send the water toward her side until the county inspection is over." 3 weeks later, the county stormwater inspector would stand in my ruined basement with dye test results. Drainage easement records, contractor invoices, camera footage, and the HOA's own emails. The pipe would be removed. The HOA's insurance carrier would take over the claim. Nolan would be forced to retract his flooding post publicly. And the board's little drainage shortcut would cost them $158,000 in remediation, legal fees, lost sale damages, mold prevention, basement restoration, engineering review, and county penalties. But that morning, standing in the dark while water climbed around my ankles, all I knew was this: the HOA had turned my house into a drain and then tried to make me disclose it as my defect. I did not want to sell that house. I had to. My daughter, Emily, was 17 and had been accepted into a clinical program 2 hours away, near the hospital that had treated her since she was little. She was born with a kidney condition that turned ordinary plans into careful logistics. Specialist appointments, lab work, medication schedules, insurance calls, school accommodations. More driving than I can count. For years, our house in Willow Creek Estates had been the one stable thing. It was a 2-story brick home at the back of a quiet subdivision outside Raleigh, North Carolina. Nothing glamorous. A small front porch, a maple tree in the yard, a kitchen window facing the woods, and a basement I had slowly turned from concrete storage space into something clean and useful. When Emily was younger, the basement was where we kept medical supplies, holiday decorations, and the treadmill I pretended to use. As she got older, it became her study room. We painted the walls soft gray, added shelves, put down waterproof flooring, bought a used desk. She taped college brochures above it like little windows into a future she was determined to reach. That basement mattered. Not because it was expensive, because it was proof we had kept going. When Emily got into the clinical program, we celebrated for about 10 minutes before reality arrived. The commute would be too much. Her appointments would become more frequent. I could not work full-time, manage her care, and drive 4 hours round trip every week, so we decided to sell and move closer. The market was good, the timing was tight. I needed the sale to cover the new place, moving costs, medical expenses, and a little breathing room. My realtor, Sandra, told me the house would show well if we staged it properly and priced it fairly. So I spent 6 weeks getting it ready. I repainted trim, replaced 2 light fixtures, cleaned the gutters, serviced the WAC, organized every closet, hired a handyman to patch drywall, paid for a pre-listing inspection. Most importantly, I had the basement inspected for moisture dry. That was the word in the report. No active seepage, no visible water intrusion, no mold-like growth, dry. I kept that report in a folder because selling a house makes you paranoid in a legal way. Behind my backyard was an HOA common area, a sloped strip with grass, shrubs, 2 storm drains, and a shallow drainage swale that carried water toward the side street. The swale had been there since the subdivision was built. It did not belong to me. It was part of the recorded stormwater plan. I knew the basics because my late husband, Aaron, had once argued with the HOA about dumping mulch into it. Aaron was an engineer, the kind of man who could not walk past bad grading without making a face. He used to say water always remembers where it is supposed to go, even when people forget. When he died 4 years earlier, I kept his files. Inside one folder labeled House Drainage were copies of the subdivision's stormwater map, county easement language, and a photo he had taken of the rear swale during a storm. Water flowed behind our fence, then away from the houses. Away, that was the important part. Nolan Briggs lived next door. He had never liked me much, though I never fully understood why. Maybe because Aaron had challenged his landscaping project years earlier. Maybe because Nolan wanted my side yard for a wider privacy hedge, and I refused to move the fence. Maybe because some people treat neighbors like obstacles until they can find a rule to use against them. Nolan served on the HOA landscaping committee. That gave him just enough authority to be dangerous. 2 weeks before my listing went live, the HOA announced a common area beautification and drainage improvement project behind our row of homes. I emailed the management company immediately and asked whether the stormwater swale would be altered. They replied, "Routine maintenance only. No drainage changes affecting private lots are anticipated." Anticipated. Another word that means nobody checked. I forwarded that email to Sandra. She told me to keep everything I did. I just did not know yet how much I would need it. The work started on a Thursday. A small contractor crew arrived with a mini trencher, rolls of black corrugated pipe, bags of gravel, and a skid steer. They parked in the common area access lane behind Nolan's house. I was inside packing kitchen cabinets when I heard the machinery. I went out back and saw Nolan standing with the contractor near the slope. He was pointing toward the low area behind my fence. I asked what they were doing. Nolan said the HOA was fixing ponding behind the common area gate. I asked whether they were changing the swale. He said, "They were improving drainage efficiency," I said. The county stormwater map showed water was supposed to flow toward the side street, not toward my foundation. He smiled and said, "Maybe your husband's old papers aren't the final authority anymore." My husband had been dead 4 years. Nolan knew that. I told him not to direct water onto my property, he said. The work was on HOA land and I should focus on my move. Focus on my move. That should have told me everything. By evening, the crew was gone. The slope looked rough, but the rain had not started yet. I took photos through the fence. A fresh trench ran across the common area. Straw-covered, disturbed soil. Part of the old shallow swale looked filled, near the bottom of the slope just behind my back fence. I saw the end of a black pipe half hidden under pine straw. I emailed the HOA that night, no reply. Friday was sunny, Saturday was cloudy. Sunday morning the storm came hard. I woke to rain against the windows and thought only about the open house. Sandra texted at 6:48 a.m. asking whether the driveway signs were still up. I told her. Yes. Then I heard the water. At first I thought it was the sump pump. Then I remembered I did not have a sump pump because the basement had never needed one. When I opened the basement door, the sound changed from suspicious to terrifying. Water was coming through the rear foundation wall near the washer hookup, spreading across the floor, carrying mud and grass, soaking the baseboards, lifting the corner of the new flooring. The outlet sparked once before the breaker tripped. I called Sandra, then an electrician, then my insurance company. Then I ran outside and saw the pipe. The black corrugated pipe behind my fence was discharging water directly into the narrow strip between my fence and the basement wall. The flow had carved a muddy channel through my mulch and pooled against the foundation. The old swale, the one that should have carried water away, had been partially blocked by fresh soil and straw. Nolan was already outside, under an umbrella, watching. I asked if he had told the contractor to point the pipe at my yard. He said the pipe was part of HOA drainage maintenance, and any water entering my basement proved my grading had failed. My grading. The water was shooting out of an HOA pipe like a fire hose, he said. Buyers had a right to know if a property had drainage issues. I told him to stay off my property, he said. He was standing in the common area. Then he took a picture of the muddy water along my fence. That picture appeared in the neighborhood group less than an hour later. Nolan wrote, "Anyone attending today's open house on Birch Hollow Court should be aware there appears to be known basement flooding and unresolved rear drainage failure at the listing. Known basement flooding." Sandra called me immediately. She said we had to cancel the open house. We could not show a house with active water intrusion, electrical concerns, and a public post raising disclosure issues. She was right. But I still felt like someone had taken the next year of my daughter's life and dropped it into muddy water. By Monday, the whole violation arrived: unmanaged drainage discharge, standing water, visible erosion, failure to maintain rear lot grading, 10 days to correct. Attached were photos from Nolan, cropped photos, my muddy fence line, water near the foundation, a close-up of soil erosion. Not one photo showed the HOA pipe, not one showed the filled swale, not one showed the trenching work in the common area. Nolan had cut the truth out of the frame. Then the property manager emailed Sandra, not me, asking whether the listing disclosure would be updated to reflect possible chronic basement water issues. Chronic. My house had been dry for 10 years. The only chronic problem was the HOA creating damage and then documenting it like evidence against me. That was when I opened Aaron's drainage folder, and then I checked the camera. My backyard camera was not installed for drainage. It was installed for raccoons. The raccoons had been stealing tomatoes from my raised beds the summer before, and Emily insisted we needed proof because she said no jury would convict without video. So I bought a camera and pointed it toward the back fence. That ridiculous tomato camera saved my sale. The footage from Thursday evening showed the contractor clearly at 6:41 p.m. The mini trencher crossed the common area behind Nolan's yard. At 6:49, Nolan walked into frame and pointed toward my fence. At 6:53, the contractor carried black corrugated pipe along the slope. At 7:02, the pipe end appeared near my rear fence. At 7:11, the crew covered disturbed soil with straw. Then came the audio faint, but there, the HOA president, Marcy Dalton, stood beside Nolan near the common area gate. She said, "Send the water toward her side until the county inspection is over." Nolan answered, "She'll be gone once the house sells," Marcy said. "Then it becomes the buyer's problem." I listened to that clip 5 times, not because I doubted it, because I needed to understand how casually they had said it. Then I called an attorney named Priya Shah. She handled real estate disputes, HOA claims, and seller disclosure issues. I sent her the pre-listing inspection, the dry basement report, the listing photos, the HOA maintenance email, Nolan's post, the violations notice, Aaron's drainage map, and the camera footage. She called back and said, "Do not repair anything permanent until we document the source." That sentence saved me from making their lie harder to prove. Priya sent preservation letters to the HOA, the management company, Nolan, the landscaping contractor, and the HOA's insurer. She demanded work orders, invoices, drainage plans. contractor communications, board approvals, photos, complaint records, internal emails, and all communications about my listing or open house. Then she contacted the county stormwater office. The inspector assigned to the case was named Calvin Price. He arrived 2 days later in rubber boots, carrying dye tablets, a measuring rod, and a rolled copy of the subdivision drainage plan. He started behind my fence. He looked at the pipe outlet, then the blocked swale, then the slope, then the basement wall. Then he asked who authorized the pipe. The HOA property manager said it was routine maintenance. Calvin said, "Routine maintenance does not create a new discharge point. That was the first time. Any one official said the thing plainly." He ran a dye test. Bright green dye went into the upper common area drain. Within minutes, green water came out of the black pipe behind my fence and pooled at the rear foundation. The old swale toward the side street stayed mostly dry because the new trench had intercepted the flow. Calvin photographed everything. Then he compared the installed pipe to the recorded stormwater easement map. The county map showed runoff moving across the common area into the side swale. Then, toward the detention basin, the HOA pipe moved it directly toward my house. Not slightly, not accidentally, directly. Calvin asked the contractor for a permit or stormwater approval. The contractor did not have one, he said. Nolan told him it was HOA landscaping maintenance, and no permit was required because they were not working on private property. Calvin said stormwater does not become legal because it starts on common land. Priya smiled when I told her that the electrician documented water near the outlet and panel concern. A mitigation company documented moisture levels, wet drywall, affected flooring, and mold prevention work needed immediately. Sandra documented canceled showings, loss of buyer interest, and the listing status change. 2 buyers who had been scheduled for the open house withdrew after seeing Nolan's post. Then Priya found the HOA emails. 1 week before the project, Marcy wrote to Nolan, "County is inspecting drainage complaints near the common gate next month. We need that ponding gone before they see it." Nolan replied, "If we send the water behind her fence, the buyer will deal with it after closing." Marcy answered, "Do it quietly. She's already listing. Do it quietly. That was not maintenance. That was a plan." The legal turn came from a map Aaron had saved and the county had never forgotten. The subdivision stormwater plan was recorded when Willow Creek Estates was built. It showed drainage easements, swales, detention basins, and flow arrows. Those arrows mattered. Water from the common area behind my house was supposed to flow parallel to the rear fences, then down toward the side street, then into the basin. It was not supposed to be captured in a pipe and discharged against a private foundation. Calvin explained it simply. The HOA did not own the right to redirect stormwater just because the ground belonged to the association. Common area did not mean consequence-free area. Any alteration to an approved drainage path required engineering review and county approval. Any new discharge affecting a private lot could trigger enforcement. The pipe had neither. Priya sent the county map, dye test results, camera footage, dry basement inspection, Nolan's cropped complaint photos, and the HOA emails to the board. The HOA tried to retreat. First they said the pipe was temporary. Then they said the contractor misunderstood instructions. Then they said the storm was unusually heavy. Then they said my basement might have had pre-existing vulnerability. Priya replied with one sentence. Pre-existing vulnerability does not explain a new pipe discharging county-mapped common area runoff into her foundation 4 hours before an open house. That sentence became the spine of the case. Then the contractor produced his invoice. It described the job as redirect rear gate ponding away from inspection area, install temporary drain pipe toward Birch Hollow rear lot, cover disturbed swale with straw, toward Birch Hollow rear lot, my lot, temporary, inspection area. All of their excuses kept turning into evidence. Then came the worst email. The management company had asked Marcy whether the work could affect my listing. Marcy replied, "She is moving anyway. Once the buyer owns it, drainage disclosure becomes their issue." Their issue. They were not just careless. They were trying to push the problem into a real estate transaction and let me carry the liability. That was when Priya changed the demand letter. She accused the HOA, Nolan, Marcy, and the contractor of unauthorized stormwater alteration, nuisance, trespass by water intrusion, negligence, interference with sale, false HOA enforcement. Defamation tied to Nolan's flooding post, failure to maintain common drainage infrastructure, and attempted concealment affecting real estate disclosure. She demanded immediate removal of the pipe, restoration of the approved swale, emergency water mitigation, mold prevention, basement repair, electrical inspection, listing interruption damages, attorney fees, county engineering review, written withdrawal of the HOA violation, and a public retraction of Nolan's post. The HOA's attorney responded that the association wanted to resolve the matter without escalation. Without escalation, they had flooded my basement, canceled my open house, damaged my disclosure position, then hoped for quiet, but the county had already opened an enforcement case. Calvin issued a notice of violation requiring the HOA to stop unauthorized discharge immediately, remove the temporary pipe, restore the swale, submit an engineered drainage correction plan, and pay for county inspection. He also ordered them not to make further stormwater modifications without approval. That notice changed everything, because now my basement flood was not a homeowner maintenance issue. It was an HOA-created stormwater violation. Sandra put the listing on hold, but she also told me something that kept me from falling apart. If we document this right, she said, this becomes their problem, not the house history. That was the goal, not pretending the flood had not happened, proving why it happened. The county site meeting happened the following Tuesday. It was supposed to be limited. It was not. Nolan came, Marcy came, the property manager came, the contractor came, Priya came, Sandra came. Calvin from County Stormwater came with another inspector and a copy of the drainage plan in a clear plastic sleeve. And 3 buyers who had previously been interested in the house showed up, because Sandra had told their agents there would be official documentation of the drainage issue. That was bold. I was terrified, Sandra said. Sunlight sells better than rumors. Calvin began. In the common area, he showed the original swale, then the filled section, then the new pipe, then the flow arrows on the county plan. He explained that the HOA's drainage alteration did not match the approved stormwater design. He explained the dye test. He explained that the discharge point directed runoff toward my foundation. He explained that no county approval had been issued for the work. Nolan tried to interrupt and say my house had drainage problems. Calvin looked at him and asked for any record of prior flooding. Nolan did not have one. Priya did. She handed over the dry basement inspection, prior listing photos, repair records, and 10 years of insurance history with no water claims. Then she handed over Nolan's neighborhood post. Known basement flooding, Calvin said. Known by whom? No one answered. Then Priya played the camera clip. The contractor trenching. Nolan pointing the pipe being placed. Marcy saying, send the water toward her side until the county inspection is over. One of the buyers whispered something to her agent. Marcy said the audio was being taken out of context. Sandra, who had been quiet all morning, said, the context is standing in my client's flooded basement. We walked inside next. The basement smelled like fans, disinfectant, and wet drywall. The flooring had been pulled up along the back wall. The baseboards were gone. Moisture meters had left little pin marks. My daughter's old study desk sat covered in plastic sheeting. Calvin followed the water line across the wall. The mitigation contractor explained the moisture readings. The electrician explained why the outlet sparking required inspection. Then Calvin issued the field order. The HOA had to remove the pipe within 48 hours, restore the swale under county supervision, hire a licensed drainage engineer, pay for follow-up inspection, and provide written confirmation that no new discharge would be directed toward my property. The contractor was cited for performing stormwater alteration without approval. The HOA violation against me had to be withdrawn because the drainage problem originated from common area work. Then Priya addressed Nolan's post, she said, if he did not retract it publicly that day. The defamation claim would move forward separately. By 5 p.m., Nolan posted, "My prior statement regarding known basement flooding at the Birch Hollow listing was inaccurate. The water intrusion was caused by an HOA common area drainage alteration currently under county review. It was stiff. It was humiliating. It was exactly what I needed." The HOA withdrew the violation the same afternoon. Not after a meeting, not after discussion that afternoon. The insurance claim took longer. The HOA carrier first tried to argue that water intrusion was excluded. PREA countered that the claim was not natural seepage. It was damage caused by the association's unauthorized drainage work, documented by camera, dye test, invoices, emails, and county enforcement. My own insurer covered emergency mitigation and then pursued recovery. The final resolution reached $158,000. The largest part was not just the basement flooring. It was water mitigation, mold prevention, electrical inspection, drywall replacement, engineering review, swale restoration, legal fees, listing interruption, lost buyer damages, county penalties, disclosure correction, and the cost of keeping the sale alive after the HOA tried to brand my home as a flood risk. Marcy resigned from the board. Nolan was removed from the landscaping committee. The management company lost the Willow Creek account at the end of the year, and the HOA had to adopt a rule requiring county approval, engineering review, and written notice to affected owners before any common area drainage change. Aaron would have loved that rule. He would have highlighted it. Twice. The basement was repaired before we sold. Not hidden. Repaired. There is a difference. Every damage section was documented. Every moisture reading was saved. Every invoice was copied. Every county notice went into the disclosure packet. Every buyer who came after that saw the full story. Dry inspection before the HOA work, unauthorized pipe, dye test, county violation, repair records, swale restoration, and written confirmation that the drainage path had been corrected. Some buyers walked away. I understood. Water scares people. It scared me too, but the couple who eventually bought the house appreciated the documentation. The husband was an architect. He looked through the packet for almost an hour, then said something I will never forget. "I would rather buy a house with a documented problem fixed by the county than a house with a mystery everyone is pretending not to see." That sentence felt like air. We closed 6 weeks later than planned. The sale price was not quite what it would have been before the flood, but the settlement covered the gap. The repairs, the legal costs, and the delay. More importantly, it let Emily and me move closer to her hospital without carrying Nolan's lie into the next chapter of our lives. On our last night in the house, I walked down to the basement, alone. The walls were clean again. The flooring was new. The outlet had been replaced. The fans were gone. Emily's study, desk had already been loaded into the moving truck. But I could still see where it had been. For years she had sat there under those college brochures, proving to herself that illness could change her route, but not cancel her future. The HOA almost turned that room into a warning label. They almost made me sell my home as if it had betrayed me. But houses do not usually betray people. People do. Especially people who think common property means common consequences for everyone but themselves. I kept Aaron's drainage folder. I added new pages to it. The camera still, the dye test photos. The county violation, Nolan's retraction, the HOA withdrawal letter, and the final settlement statement. On the front I wrote one of Aaron's old sayings. Water remembers because it does. Water remembers slope. Water remembers gravity. Water remembers every shortcut someone cuts into the ground, and if you document it carefully enough, water can also remember who sent it there. So if your HOA, neighbor, landscaper, developer, or contractor ever changes a drain, fills a swale, installs a pipe, grades common land, or tells you runoff is suddenly your problem, do not accept their version just because the water ended up on your side of the fence. Pull the county drainage map. Save your inspection reports. Photograph the flow. Check your cameras. Ask for permits. Call stormwater enforcement. And if they try to make you disclose their damage as your defect, make them put their work orders and emails next to the water line. If this story made you think of someone who needs to hear it, share it with them. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Save the video and subscribe for more stories about ordinary homeowners who learned that property lines do not stop water. But records can stop lies, because I did not beat the HOA by hiding the flood. I beat them by proving where the water came from, and when Emily and I drove away from that house for the last time. The repaired swale behind the fence was carrying rain exactly where it was always supposed to go. Away from the home, away from the lie, and away from the people who thought I would be gone before anyone checked the map.